Welcome to FadeIn, Carnegie Screenwriters look at the film industry in Pittsburgh. I'm Carrie Collins, your host. Today, we're continuing our discussion with Jim Mercurio, who is a filmmaker and a story analyst. Welcome back, Jim.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Jim and I are also joined today by writer and story consultant Scott Wyatt. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So a little background on you, Scott. You grew up in California's San Joaquin Valley, correct?
Yes.
And you worked in LA for many years as a writer and as a story consultant.
Yes.
And you found your way to Beaver Falls.
I was a visiting assistant professor at Carnegie Mellon, and my wife and I like Pittsburgh a lot, and we've decided to call this home as long as we can.
That's fantastic. We're happy to have you here, and we're happy you brought your skills here. Your skills really are as a story analyst. You are usually called when something's gone terribly wrong in a script. Is that right?
Yes. I'm called when something is going to be produced or is in production and has to be fixed.
Okay.
So there are properties that are already owned, already committed. There is a budget, there is a schedule, and they need it to be completed.
So you have a deadline that
Yes.
is stricter than most, I'm guessing.
Sometimes less than 24 hours.
Not to make semantics, sometimes what he does is called being a story doctor, meaning like you're not just the story analyst who's giving notes, but you're actually doing the writing yourself. You know,
and the term
cool
script
niche.
doctor is definitely the more common.
Right.
Doctor format is the name that Dave Trottier uses. So it's something that people know. If you say you're a script doctor, they know what it is, but script consultant is the more official way of saying it.
Title, that's what you put on your business card.
Yeah, because putting down script doctor, you're there to save the patient.
Patient just happens to be 120 pages, or probably not anymore. Am
112,
I right?
yeah.
What is it now?
112.
Yeah,
108.
usually.
Yeah.
It's usually between 100 and 112.
And is it 120 pages and people go, oh, I'm not going to read that? Or is it not really?
It's kind of a joke, but like, it used to be you would take 20 scripts home for the weekend, and you'd look at a script, you'd feel it like you could tell the page count by just holding your hands.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, 125, then you flip through it, see how much black space and white space is on the page, and it's definitely part of the product. I mean, if you have to read the script, you read the script, but it's definitely part of it. So like, it's not so much about rules, but it's like, is this story being told really tight? Is everything, is your action description really tight? Is the story really compact? If you can lose 8 pages and you don't, then you're not doing your job as a storyteller. And we can talk more about craft later, but it's like, it's not just about the rules, it's about, there's a reason for it too.
That's the similarity between what both of you do. You both have to look at a script in your analysis capacity and really dive in and find out what's wrong.
Find out what's not working, and generally what's not working is they've screened the dailies, or they've screened what's in the can, and they don't like it. Either the producer doesn't like it, maybe the director doesn't like it, or in rare cases a test audience doesn't like it, and they come back and they say, we have got to fix these 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay.
And it's amazing how 3 or 4 minutes can kill a perfectly good hour of television or a 90-minute movie.
I'm curious, so what's your ratio of trying to do something that's already been shot and fixing something to reshoot it, or you have a script that's ready to go into production and it needs a punch-up or dialogue partner? What's the ratio of
Which is what I think people
jobs?
traditionally think your job is. It's nothing's been shot yet, but you do both.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's already something that's being done, and I'd say it's, in today's world, that's almost 50-50. That wouldn't be the case 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they'd fix the script because they wanted you there. You had to use FedEx or UPS to move the script around. Now, I worked on a project that was in Naples, Florida. They called and said, be here for 5 days. So it's not a project that's, we're thinking about doing. It's we need you for 5 days in Florida to fix something.
That we're currently
and all we're
working
covering
on.
is 5 days, so that's your timeline.
Yeah.
And so that's a very clear.
Yeah. I have a few like A-list clients who make these big movies, and there'll be ones who'll say, you know what, this ending's not quite working, we're thinking about it. But for the most part, just my niche is, I work with a lot of I have like a handful of well-known, Oscar-nominated, professional writers, but I kind of have because I do teaching in my DVDs, which we talked about, a lot of people who are just writers come to me at the script stage and want to develop it. Maybe sometimes they've got money in place, oftentimes they're just trying to become a better writer. Yeah. So it's like that same process, but it's a little bit more theoretical. It's kind of like to be a spec script. And then we can decide whether or not we need to be practical and be like, well, we need to get this to be made, or it's more about the growth and just teaching. It's like, let's just write a good script for now, and maybe you let it go, maybe you keep wrestling with it. We talked about that earlier about when you let a script go. But yeah, I actually do some teaching, so it's not just filmmakers who are doing it and have already made, but people are writing on spec.
And I think that's a very important difference in what our skill sets are. Jim coaches the writer. He's helping the writer prepare a script to pitch it, to sell it, to market it, to take those emotions that writer's putting on the page and those hopes and dreams and get it refined so a producer, an acquisitions department will look at it. I'm not so kind with writers. Because I'm so used to being hired to give notes on something, I give notes. I don't do traditional coverage, scale it 0 to 100, red, yellow, green. Right. No, it's already going. But that's a little too late.
Your target, though, his target audience, though, is the producer, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be, okay, that's a different thing, too.
I'm not trying to encourage the producer and make him feel good.
Right, yeah.
Right.
That's where Jim has to learn to be more diplomatic, and I'm not diplomatic. I'm just not.
And I still have to learn to be honest.
Yeah. So I'm the one that, a producer wants to hear what's wrong.
Right.
So I've found that one of the things that many of the writers in Pittsburgh, where it's an emerging media market, one of the things they need to learn is that criticism in the industry is a little different than what they expect. Yeah. They want to be told, well, this is good, but, because they've learned that paradigm of you tell someone what's good and how to improve it. And I'm more of, because I'm on a tight schedule, I just have to say, page 5 here, you've got this car chase that is not going to be, we can't film this on this deadline. It's got to change. Right. Yeah. I'm not used to going in first and saying, here's all the things that are great about your script.
Right.
I'm not paid to hire.
Right.
Yeah, if it's already great, I'm not called.
Right, there's no reason for you to be in the room.
That's possibly like one of the advantages, though, because the question we were talking about beforehand about whether or not you have to be in Los Angeles. One of the advantages, besides being there and having access to networking, is the culture. You're around a bunch of other people, hundreds or thousands of other people who are doing the same thing. Yeah. So one, you realize competition. 2, you're constantly reading and learning and growing, pushing each other. Friendly competition, sometimes not so friendly competition. Sure. But it's like, if you're sitting here in Pittsburgh, who are your peers? Like, do you have 30 or 20 people who are like doing this full time? Who are like fighting and seeing every single movie and talking about every single movie, kind of like the Tarantino experience. Like he was working in a video store, or J.K. Rowling was broke and she spent years creating that world. Like, how do you force yourself to have that experience that kind of like defines you?
So what do you recommend here in Pittsburgh? Writing groups, I don't know, things like the Crew Connect through Steeltown. What do you think works for writers?
You want to start with that? Because I might have a counterpoint to it.
I think it's really difficult to find places where, because in LA, what I would do is give someone a script, they'd read it, they'd come back and give suggestions, because that way you've already read, you've prepared your notes, and then you spend your meeting time discussing the notes. Yeah, okay. Here, groups like Carnegie Screenwriters are really positive, but people are bringing pages to read. Right. So you don't really have time to reflect, you don't have time to provide notes. It's not how writing groups are done in LA. Okay. And it really doesn't work for me.
Okay.
It becomes cyclical too. If you have a bunch of screenwriters at this level, just 3 or 4 or 5 in the community, you might slowly get better, but it's kind of like competition. If you're in, Darwinian, competition, if you have 500 screenwriters, some of them are really good, right? And you're going to learn from them. They're going to push you, and you're going to push them, and it's going to kind of escalate higher. Also, in Pittsburgh, you might find 10 great writers who really push you, but in LA, you have 15 friends who are producers and development execs and story analysts and readers, and they want to discover. And here's a myth. If you write an amazing script, like amazing, that's commercial in some way, it will open doors. People want to be the one that says, you have to read this. Because I've read 5,000 scripts, and like 10 or 5 of them should definitely be made. 5 are artistic masterpieces that weren't very commercial. But that's out of 5,000. So if you read 300, 400, 500 scripts a year, you want to be the one to your boss that says, because that's actually how you get promoted. Like, I have friends who used to be like the special reader just for Spielberg, or just for Arnold Schwarzenegger, or just for like these big names, just for Tom Hanks, because they had a really good kind of ability to sense out material that was right for them. And like, that's the point. If you, if you can find, or maybe even cultivate, like, hey, I developed this for this guy. And you bring it to somebody, that can change your career instantly. Because that's what development is, developing scripts and finding writers.
Well, let's talk about that script. So everyone wants to write that script that everybody is hot to get it to their boss and get it made. How does that happen? What are the essential aspects of a script that you both see in your sort of similar lines of work that need to be in every script, or that maybe are an essential part of the story?
Like I said before, I've directed about 50 hours in DVDs on screenwriting. And on my screenwriting journey, I read, 60, 80 screenwriting books from like cover to cover, because you're trying to figure this out. So to say there's like, there's 1 or 2 quick things, it's like the idea is, though, I'll say this, most people don't have a clear grasp of what screenwriting, good screenwriting really is. It's a little too dialogue oriented, it's not enough conflict. We were talking about, it's not the opposites, it's not really an immovable force and like, you know, an unstoppable object, or, you know, vice versa. So it's like at every given level, it's like, you open the script and like, well, that scene could be tighter, and that could be a little more conflict, and that character could be defined a little bit better, and we've seen that before, so they could put a twist on it. So like, if you start doing that, and like as a teacher, it's tough because, you know, like he was saying, you're being critical. Now, sitting there like as a teacher to a writer or as a friend saying, this 3 pages here, let's talk about it for 3 hours, what's wrong with it?
Right, yeah.
That's not how you go about every day, and that doesn't immediately translate into better writing, but some way or another, you have to like see it clearly, have the fight, and basically be able to see like, oh my God, there's 100 things that I haven't thought about. So whether or not I instantly pick up this book or use his method or my method, I'm not done yet. And you know, sometimes you know the thing about you don't finish a screenplay, you abandon it. Yeah. That's true, but guess what? Most people abandon the screenplay too soon. If their goal is to actually sell it, right, and it's going to be the one that they put their name on, say, this is the thing, it's going to be my calling card, they don't even know how to rewrite it more. They don't even know like the next steps up, I believe.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen in the Pittsburgh community, there are a few people who are offering script editing services. Editing will not sell your script. Making sure you have all of the right spellings and the right punctuation is not revising.
It's kind of a given, right? It should be in the right format. The punctuation should be appropriate.
Yeah, revising is, how do I build that tension?
Right.
Why am I not getting the audience on the edge of their seats? Yeah. For me, I do a 5 and dime. I read the first 5 pages, the last 10 pages, and I want to know in those first 5, do I feel like there is someone that if they don't achieve their goal, either I'm really upset that they didn't make it, or I'm really glad they didn't. Right. And people will say, oh, well, you're talking about the hero's journey. No, it could be a villain. Right. I could make a movie about a murderer. Dexter, great TV series, great series of books. What you're hoping for in that case maybe is that he doesn't accomplish his goal. Right. But I need stakes. I need conflict that the audience is rooting for or against within 5 minutes. Right. And if I'm sitting there 5 minutes in thinking, well, it's a nice family. They have a nice car. Look at the beautiful street. This was filmed.
A lot of mood and tone.
And a lot of the stuff I've seen out of Pittsburgh, some of the indie stuff here, spends a lot of time on setup. Right. When one of the things you'll find if you talk to like Gary Garrison, who's a wonderful writer, he will tell you start in the middle. Right. You can do the whole first act, quote unquote, which is a very common trick in 10-minute plays, with a line or two. You have the husband and wife in the car saying, well, that family reunion was horrible. Now we know where they were, where they're going from,
how they felt about it,
everything. And you know, I don't want the origin story to go on for 15, 20 minutes. I want, give me the setup, we're there now. Let's start a fight.
Enter the scene late and leave early, right?
And I would agree that you want to see, maybe not a fight, but conflict,
some sort
tension.
of conflict.
Right.
And conflict doesn't necessarily mean a fight. So explain conflict and what exactly that means in a story.
To me, it's differing goals by different people. Okay. My goals and your goals are for some reason at odds.
So conflicting goals as opposed to conflict.
Yeah, and I think those conflicting goals lead to conflict. They lead to people arguing. They lead to teams fighting each other, whatever. But you have to have either different goals or goals that are opposed to each other inherently.
And that's back to like seeing screenwriting for what it is. I think probably one of the ways that I sum up what he's talking about is the idea of dilemma. That everything boils down to really, really hard choice for a character. Like in Godfather, well, I could become a criminal and like, you know, maybe have to kill people, whatever. But if that's hard, because I'm Michael, I stayed out of it, right? Or my family gets destroyed, my father dies. That's a pretty hard choice. But also, like in Superbad, do I stay easy, safe, you know, male friends and bonding? Boop, boop, remember that cute little moment? It's actually them regressing to like this safe place. They need to go out there and meet girls and risk it. And I'm not talking about just sex, but just like, just experience life. So like, to me, it kind of all comes down to dilemma. And a side thing about his 5 and 10 story, like, I don't want to sound negative, but like pretty much you could read a page or a paragraph of someone's writing and pretty much tell, or I can tell, the level of their screenwriting. Okay. And like if someone takes, like you said, they take 5 pages, sets things up. The opening image of 7 is 5 words. Light fights through the soot. Light and darkness, fighting through. And then a second later, it's a little bit different in the movie. We could talk about that if we were in a class. But Somerset is scraping away dirt off of a dirty wall to get a rose. So this character, the theme of the movie, light and darkness, he's a person who's looking for like the light in life in this. And go back to the end of the movie, you know, Ernest Hemingway said the world's a great place worth fighting for. I believe in the second part. He's a guy. Was he fighting to find goodness? Did he find it? I don't know, but at least he's still fighting. So Andrew Kevin Walker, now Fincher changed it, the director changed it, but he had 5 words to do it. So when you tell me, well, I took a couple pages or 3 or 4 pages from my opening image and theme introduction, we're like, you have 5 words, and then in the script it's like 5 shots of him getting ready in the same thing. The switchblade with the badge, with the pen. Chaos, order, night, light and dark, like it's all right there. So when it's like, you know, one of the things Scott and I talk about, like, you know, we tend, like if we were to give each other like an orientation, he's definitely more comfortable with dad and I'm a very intuitive person. But like, here's the thing, you have to attack your weaknesses. So like, I don't write by like dad all the time, but if you sit there and tell me, well, my kind of romantic comedy, or my comedy like Wedding Crashers and 40-Year-Old Virgin, my inciting incident's on page 27, and you go to those 5 scripts in the genre that you like, and they're all on page 9 or 11, Step Brothers 9, you know, Wedding Crashers 11, why are we even having this discussion about 27? Andrew Kevin Walker did in 5 words. Why do you get 3 pages for an opening image? You know what I mean?
Are writers trying to write a shooting script as opposed to?
Not even that. I think too many of the writers are trying to direct. Your job, unless you're a writer-director, and you're going to put up the money and you're going to do it, my job as a writer is to give ideas. What I write is probably not even the best way to do something. You know, I was talking to someone this morning, and the line in a script was, "Open this door." And my comment back to the writer was, well, don't worry about it, because that actor is going to get in character, that director, and it may become, open this whatever door with a little more colorful language, or it may just be,
but it's not
open now. And how that is directed, how that's acted, your line, open this door, is not what's going to be filmed necessarily. It might be, it might not be.
And as an intellectual exercise, it's not radio. Why is the word door in there? Talk about like wasting space. And I'm being nitpicky, but here's the thing, like if I read your first sentence, and you've wasted space, you've wasted adverbs, you've been vague, your sentence is anticlimactic, and we can talk about what that means. Well, why would I expect that your whole 120-page script? First of all, your 120-page script should now be 108, because I can already tell, right?
We're going to
there's 20%, 30% fat in the first paragraph. Why would I think that your level is such that everything else is going to be really tight and right on? And it's like, it's tough because, like he was saying, I'm nicer, I'm a champion, I coach people up and get them excited. But I also see the gap. Like, I see where they are, I see where they can be. So there's the positive side of like, we're going to get you there. But there's the negative side of like, okay, I need you to see this gap and not feel like burdened or like overwhelmed by it. I'll give you the tools eventually. You know, we're writing this book and I have this, 10-hour DVD set. I put part of my life into like wanting to really communicate what screenwriting is so you can see it and you can have a chance to get there like better, more efficiently. But that's it. It's like, it's just seeing it kind of really attacking your weaknesses. Like intuition for me, I got to force myself to look at data. What's the inciting incident on these 5 scripts? Lethal Weapon has the same 7 beats as 48 Hours. I'm doing a buddy comedy. Rush Hour, same thing. But I only have 4 of those beats. Why are you working against the grain? You know, when you transcend something, it's not by taking away, it's by adding something. So it's like, it's not gonna, I think Lenoir said, learn to be a craftsman, it's not gonna destroy your genius, or being a screenwriter. So like, it's like you gotta learn the rules before you break them. I know it's cliched, but like, you transcend and make something better than everything else by adding, not subtracting, 99% of the time.
And I think the screenwriters that I have met who are aspiring screenwriters, they don't take the criticism. They don't understand it. They'll come back with, well, I don't want to follow the rules. I want to do something original. And what they're forgetting is that these rules, whether you believe Joseph Campbell or Carl Jung or whatever, maybe this is some sort of evolutionary psychology. But there are ways we have told stories from the Bible to today in the Western tradition. I mentioned to a screenwriting class this week that the most famous story in the Western tradition, according to Eisenstein, who should know something, was the Christ. He's born, leave out 33 years, they're boring. Get to the exciting part.
That's
Which
true.
is the Terminator
That's
movies.
true.
Same story, pretty much.
And so you sit there.
I've never heard that reference.
No,
that
it is. It's the
comparison.
Christ-
Yeah,
It
it
is.
is a story, yeah.
And but this idea that you leave out the boring part.
Yeah.
And the boring part was 33 years. And yet we have screenwriters who are filling in those 33 years. Let's have a shot of him in preschool. Let's have a shot of teenage Jesus with zits.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we don't need that. Let's just, okay, we can show, my thought on this is I bring up, for myself, Hellboy. We see that he's born, we understand how he gets a father, and then boom, he's an adult. We don't need Hellboy as a teenager.
Right.
We don't need, and Guillermo del Toro has talked about knowing when
Right.
to break the rules.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't need the whole middle. You can have the beginning very quickly,
Right.
get to the action.
Right.
And this delayed action, this delayed storytelling
Right.
is what we see time and time again. And it's someone telling you, well, I want to be telling narrative. I want to
Right.
be setting this so the director does it right.
Yeah.
That's not your job.
Are they writing a book,
Yes,
essentially?
exactly.
So it sounds like you are conflicting the earlier advice of you put everything in that we were talking about, but you're not. What you're saying is that you need to find those essential parts and
Yes.
I
include
think you're
those.
better
Add
off
more.
overwriting and then
And then edit.
edit down.
Right.
I think overwrite, get everything you want out there, and then you might find out that your first act doesn't have to be 30 pages,
Right.
it can be 10.
Right.
And you can find those things that this is not adding to the character, it's not adding to the conflict, it doesn't create anything that is going to keep the audience on their edge of their seats.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're an intermediate writer and give me a 125-page draft, maybe twice out of a couple thousand scripts, it should be that long, but it's 112 already, or 108, 104. And some writers, it's actually more like 80 because it's like, okay, the action description's long, the story's kind of skimpy, they're kind of repetitive, they're kind of redundant, they don't get in scenes. So all of a sudden, like a 130-page script that an amateur writer writes is really 90 pages of story, which means now do it tight, cut out the fat, hint at things, and add another sequence.
Yeah.
You can add 8 pages. So like it's like you want to jam pack your story and then tell as efficiently as possible. So like this idea of story density, like how much good stuff you can get in a moment. Like sitcom writers.
Let's talk about story density.
Yeah, well, sitcom writers like they would circle pages. Circle jokes on a page. So like Simpsons and Cheers might have 2 or 3 jokes per page, or they would aim for 4. But like, I'll show a scene from Legolas, Lord of the Rings, when he climbs the elephant and defeats it. In that 71-second scene, there's 15 or 16 clever little moments. So you're talking like, that's about a page. So can you look at your page and say, wow, there's like 10 really cool moments that exploit the concept, that are ironic, that are surprising subtext, that are specific to the
reveal
character, that
information.
no one else could do. And it's like the expectations for people seem to be like 3 or 4 things, but it should be like 10 or 12. And that's the goal. If you get 8, because I pushed you from 3,
Right.
you've tripled your, and actually it's better because once you start telling that more complex story, it's like exponentially, it's way better because you're like engaged, it's cooler, faster. So it's like story density, the cool stuff, surprise, and humor and conflict, whatever you want to define story as, get it in there quicker, more tightly, because wrestling with brevity actually turns into storytelling. It's not just a mechanical proofreading thing, it actually will turn into like, what's the best way to express that? What's the best verb to express, what he's doing?
I think the things that I see in scripts, professionally and locally, trying to offer an opinion here and there, is that someone will have read a book.
Right.
And Jim
Or part
will
of a
tell
book.
you, I don't know about his library, but we probably have both read anywhere from 70, 80, 100 books, probably lost track of how many articles, how many,
Sure.
now with the internet, of course, it's all out there online.
Right.
There's really no excuse for someone not to read all of the early cinematography commentary. Everything out there from Eisenstein is online now because it's out of copyright.
Right.
There's all this stuff
Right.
out there that you should be reading as a writer.
I've done that for screenwriting and did probably more for filmmaking.
I think so.
Like, I was a columnist for creative screenwriting. For 18 years, I read every single issue cover to cover. Because even though at one point I was making my living like being the so-called expert, having directed 40 DVDs and all this stuff, but I'm like, I still want to learn. It's like, so it's kind of like that yes and. It's not taking away stuff. It's not like, well, I'm only going to read the good books. Read everything. I mean, just immerse yourself in it. And that's back to that why being in Los Angeles, because if you can find 300 people in that same boat with you,
Yes.
just out of grad school or just out of film school, and they want to, and they're hungry for it, and they're working a PA, and you're sitting there for 12 hours as a PA, just sitting there, but you're talking about your script. That's an environment that you need to create here. Like if you're going to be here,
Right.
you need to create that somehow, or something that kind of parallels with it. Otherwise, you're just going to be at a disadvantage because the environment's not going to be as like, you know, it's like
As fruitful.
being, yeah, it's,
And it's something to nurture here. As I said, the writers aren't used to someone like myself, certainly I've discovered. And that's okay, but we need to bring them to the point where they're used to how the industry actually works, and they learn those skills. As a student who, you know, I was very fortunate. I went to USC. I was surrounded by film. You know, in the Annenberg School, there's a lot of people who ended up.
They have a good program there?
I don't know. I've heard that LA is a good place for
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
But the thing is everyone around you is trying to be better.
Yes.
And
Right, yeah.
you know, so I was PAing, or I was, you know, doing little things, you know, just being a gopher on student films, you know, acting in student films. And as a writer, that was good for me because all of those people now, my friends, you know, whether they're at CBS or they're doing independence or they're at another studio, those friends, with technology, we can talk on Skype. We have used Skype a lot.
Right.
We have talked, and I do fly back.
Right.
Because if I'm not in touch with them, they're not going to think, I've got this scene and the person who can help me is Scott. If I'm in Pittsburgh, they're likely to forget that. So I've got to go back. I've got to remind them. The business of film is still Los Angeles. The business of theater is still New York. And I've learned that the hard way, that the first 2 years I was here, I thought, well, I'll just use email alone. And I noticed at the end of the year, my wife saying, you're not working as much as you were. You need to fly back.
Interesting.
Quickly, we talked about contrasting styles, but what we both do is we challenge you. You know, maybe it's like friendly, maybe it's tough love, but it's like we challenge you because you need it.
as the writer.
The script too, but you need it. Make it better.
And I don't know if this is something that we want to address or not. It's certainly up to Jim, but one of the things that I think makes me a better writer of all things is a medical condition.
That's interesting.
And I think that the same might be true. You know, I can't speak for Jim, but when I was born, the doctor was intoxicated and forceps went through the left frontal lobe.
Wow.
So I don't have good breaks when I'm giving feedback.
Wow, yeah.
That'll come out on student evaluations too.
Right.
Dr. Wyatt, he's rude but fair.
Right.
And it's, in some ways, I think that really actually, I think Hollywood is dominated by ADHD, Asperger's. I think it is a lot of people who are okay saying things very bluntly to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
They're very okay just saying, wow, you look horrible today. They don't try to butter it up.
Sugar-coated.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh way would be say, you
That
look
is
great,
true.
but
That
you
is
might
true,
want to, you know, have you thought about, Hollywood, they would just tell you, that does not look good for this shot. Fix it.
Well, you two have been very blunt and straightforward with us both this afternoon. It's been very helpful, I think, to everyone who's watching. It's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
No, thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. And before I let you go, Scott, what projects are you working on now that you'd like to tell us about?
Right now, I am overlooking some stuff we hope to do locally.
Okay,
Adapting
good.
novels that we want to do locally. I think there are things that can be produced in Pittsburgh, should be produced in Pittsburgh, and I would love to have teams working here. I think that that's what I want to do, is I want to find projects that can be done on a budget in the Pittsburgh region.
That's
and
great. That's great.
Work locally.
And Jim, you're leaving us again.
Yeah, New York, LA is calling. I was in Los Angeles for 15 years, was bi-coastal for a bit. I spent the last half decade like finishing up a movie that I directed, and then my DVD set and this book.
Right.
So I'm kind of like, I want to have my little character arc as a teacher and then get back to just kind of making. So, but the same advice I give, I'll probably go back to the drawing board and write a great spec script.
Great.
Modestly budgeted, like this castable, it's really kind of like, you know, high concept. And
And you'll bring it back here to Pittsburgh and shoot it.
I'm totally open to that. I'm totally open to that.
You heard it here first, folks. Well, thank you very much, Jim. It's been great talking with you, and thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. That's all for Fade In. I'm Caroline Collins, your host. I hope you'll join me again. Thanks.